Chair, members of the commission, I'll try to just provide an overview. So I do think we have all the information that we need in order for you to, develop a recommendation for the city council. We did finally get an adjustment from the League of Cities and work through a number of the things with them. And ultimately, I think, there could be any variation here, but there's three options for you to look at. And option one would be to complete the repairs. The lowest bid we got for the project was from Lonsky Construction. The insurance adjuster also got a bid, and this is our bid that we had received, and their bid was actually just a little bit higher than this one. So that particular bid is for $44,134. What that does is it deals with a little bit of the sidewall damage. The bulk of it really is in replacing the roofing, removing and replacing the skylights in the existing locations, and then there is a notation about rebuilding the doors, but that's already been completed for the most part. And then again, there's some somewhat damaged sidewall steel. So we have that from the league. They're willing to pay on that. Our deductible's $1,000, so we're pretty well on that path with that, so that you have an understanding there. I did try to just lay out some of the advantages and disadvantages. In this case, this does allow us to retain an affordable space for current tenants. The notable disadvantage would be that you're investing in an asset that's fairly old and likely past its useful life and does have ongoing future maintenance costs and expectations. Option two would be to demo the structure. That would require the cancellation of existing leases. In that instance, you would be required to provide relocation benefits, and the amount of consulting expense and cost of that is unknown. In that instance, the LMCIT would provide the depreciated value of the structure, and that they've made the determination is $22,000. Public Works would complete the demo. Dave thinks he can do that at no cost, and that there would be some salvage in the material there. I don't know exactly what that would be, but or it could possibly be retained for Public Works cold storage.
Aaron, we're not getting this on our screens here.
Oh, you're not. I think you may have to click the orange or the is it green button?
I don't have any button at all. In the very center?
Everybody, is that working for everybody, or?
There we go. Thank you.
We're good? Okay. Sorry about that.
I got it. Oh, there we go. Okay.
So in that instance, option two, the primary advantage is that it does provide an opportunity for demolition, which, I guess you could project this however you want, but I would say in the foreseeable future, this structure, is going to be in need of demolition. I put a 5-year time frame. You could certainly talk about what you think that is, but for sake of discussion, it's toward the end of its useful life here. The primary disadvantage, of course, is that it displaces the tenants, and there is an expense associated with it when it's all said and done. You're probably net zero in terms of, I'm not going to say, I don't know exactly what it'd be, but certainly relocation, the process even can have some expense with it. So option three would be to keep the structure as is and modify the lease. In this case, you could accept the $22,000 from the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust as fair market value. You could basically retain the structure as it is and not make any repairs. That would allow the current tenants to remain in its current condition, but not to fill future vacancies, which I understand there's one vacancy currently. Just realizing that this is an asset that we're not looking to invest into, you could modify the leases to require future maintenance be cost shared by tenants, and you can provide the tenants the ability to cancel their lease if they don't want to cost share either at all or on a specific improvement that's agreed upon moving forward. What this does is it does provide the sort of a shorter term opportunity to accommodate current tenants while they transition. It allows the ability for the city to manage future cost exposure and expectations on maintenance requests. And then certainly, you could take any number of these, right? You could take option 1 and do the repairs and put it, in the context of option 3, where you modify the lease and say, going forward, we're amortizing out, we're not taking on future tenants or whatever the case is. So I guess at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, defer to your discussion on the 3 options. And ultimately, whether it's, this month or whenever the commission's comfortable, the council needs to receive a recommendation from you on what you think the best way is to proceed.
Is there a deadline?
I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, at some point, the estimate we have with Lansky, I'll have to check the time frame for that. I mean, that's probably not open-ended, so to the extent that we have significant delay, they have the potential to rebid in that case. But so I guess that'd be the only thing that's somewhat time sensitive is, typically these bids are good for 90 days. I'd have to double check back on how long their pricing was good for.
Aaron, how much of the roofing, remove and replace damaged roofing, how much of the roofing was actually damaged?
I'll be honest with you, I wasn't up there. That was more of a discussion between the adjuster and the contractor, and then Dave Floor, our building maintenance person. The difficulty in this case too, of course, is what was pre-existing, what was storm orientated, and so that's kind of like, that's potentially a situation where the world may never know, right?
So we don't know if we're gonna replace an eighth of the roof or half of it, or,
Well, this is the entire roof.
the entire roof they
Yeah.
replace.
Yeah.
I mean, that would pretty much should seal it up again, I would think, as far as the rain goes.
Right.
What is the structure like, Rick, underneath that? What kind of, is that a steel framed?
No,
Is
it's purlins, well, mostly just a pole building. There are some steel beams that go across where the doors are. It's an old building. It was put up in, early 70s, I'd say.
Sam, any?
Well, excuse me, I'd hate to see it go away in the early term. I think, if we get 5 years out of it, I think we should try to do that. Especially if it had a new roof on it, and it's attached properly and all that. And as far as storm damage is concerned, it's probably storm damage over this last several years that's been causing that issue with the roof there. I'd hate to see it go away anytime soon. But
We don't have anything to replace it with, so we'd have to
that's-
dislocate a whole bunch of people out of the city and the airport. I don't see any sense to that.
Well, I mean, we definitely don't wanna do that until we've got T-hangers or something moving forward, I wouldn't think.
yeah, I think, that's why I think you're looking at a 5-year plan. I really do. Because it's,
Doug, why don't you come up to the podium if you would, please? You've got hands on, so give us a little,
My name's Doug Krause, Building E, Hangar 6. In regards to that roof on that thing, most of it is, it's, they use nails with a lead washer on them. And so most of those nails have come loose. So basically a matter of, I don't know if a person wants to get up there and pull the nails if possible and just put in screws, which would cure the problem on a lot of it. Some of the holes are oblonged out and stuff, but, and as far as the amount of steel up there that really needs to be replaced, it's all on the west end over Jim's hangar area. That's the majority of it. I figured it'd take about 30 sheets. I don't know what the lengths are, somewhere around 17 feet to replace it. The stuff that's bad. And been in contact with Winnick Supply, and they said, Ben told me if I can get them the measurements we need and what the ribbing is on it, that he can get the steel for us at whatever, I don't know what the cost would be, but he would give me a price on it then, and we could replace it and, save, certainly wouldn't cost $44,000. So, I don't know, that's just an option that I'd like to throw out there. So, as far as the side steel and stuff, I don't know if the city wants to make it look nice or what, but to us, that doesn't matter. Just to have a roof that doesn't leak would be nice.
Was the roofing steel is the same steel that's on the sides, correct?
Yep.
So if we did take some of the roof off, we could reuse possibly some of that steel on the sides to repair some of the issues.
Yeah, I think all the stuff we take off is not gonna be salvageable, really.
I'm wondering how many purlins are bad.
I don't know, I've replaced one so far over my area that I found was bad, so.
I mean, that's, with the other hangars that we had, that became an ongoing battle where we'd have to,
Yeah, well,
Replace
that other one
purlins.
those other hangars were pretty bad. They were a lot worse than this. Those were
Well, they're
flat,
older
those
than-
are flat roofs, and this one's a peaked roof, so you don't have any of that, a lot of that sitting water that you did on the other ones, so.
still an issue of age as time goes on. More
Well, yeah,
purlins will have to
right.
get replaced, yeah.
But I mean, just, if you want to get another 5 years and willing to invest a little money in it, we can make it good,
Yeah.
so.
So Chairman of the Commission, I just would submit to you, if you're looking at a repair option, from an insurance perspective, I mean, we have the ability to have a contractor come in and do the work, and it's principally going to be paid for by insurance. And so, and I have some reservations about, having a not a licensed contractor, bonded, insured individual up on a roof like that. This isn't like fixing the doors, I mean, I think, in this case, it's a bigger job, there's potential liability exposures there, and we have a viable option to hire a contractor that's cost neutral, without inconveniencing the people that are in the hangar either. So I think my recommendation to you would be to look at it from that perspective. I know it's great to have the ability to have people, do those kinds of things, but you have to balance that out each time in terms of what makes sense and what's appropriate. And I think in this case, there's nothing that would impede you from just retaining the licensed contractor to do the work. The insurance is set to pay it that way. They're going to reimburse us. They're not going to pay us more if it costs us less and all that, so.
Aaron, Tim, if you don't mind, Aaron, with the existing leases, is there anything that we need to do for the coming year? I mean, we've had storms for the last few years that have been causing havoc to all of the hangars that we have. We only have to all of the old hangars. So the question that I have is that the lease that we have, is the city protected if there was another storm and we just said, hey, we can't, is the city protected for damages that happen beyond our control? Or as the building just gets dilapidated? I mean, it could be a bad storm that comes through, or it could be that there's just more failed components and we no longer feel comfortable, let's say in July of next year, to rent it because it's unsafe. Do we need to modify the lease at all for that?
Yeah, I think we can certainly have the city attorney review that. My impression is that, those items are addressed and the liability is managed in the right way there, but we can certainly have that reviewed. And I think option 3 does contemplate that. There's a lot of ways to lease property, and an example for us is we had a similar situation with the ambulance service wanting to use the old south building. We weren't looking to invest a lot of money into it because it isn't, from our perspective, a long-term asset for us. And so we basically developed a triple net lease, or a lease where you can rent this from us, but you're pretty much responsible for the maintenance and repairs and ongoing investment in the building, because we're not interested in investing in it because it's not something we're going to continue to maintain. So. But maybe there's a little bit of opportunity, like in the case of the ambulance service, it's working for them for a period of time, and they did all the tenant improvement inside of it. They spent, I think, $150,000 or give or take, making some improvements to the thing to make it work for them. So I think that's certainly in the realm of discussion if we're going to maintain it in this indefinite period of time. And it's a collaboration then with the tenants on what they feel is important to address from a maintenance perspective, or what they feel can be deferred and still have good enjoyment of it.
I mean, all along, I've been in favor of retaining that building for a temporary period of time. It was scheduled to be demolished, but it was outside of any, height restriction areas. And I thought it'd be good to not displace all tenants, from all hangars. But we have to recognize and realize that it's an old hangar, that at some point in time, that it'll end its useful life, or a storm will damage it, or it just doesn't make sense to go in and maintain it, whether it's a renter maintaining it or the city. So I like the fact that it's there. I would hope that there'd be some magic that the Airport Commission could perform in order to allow some form of T-hangars or other types of hangars at the south building area, so that you can keep the rain off the roof, and you can keep it out from blowing through the doors, and you can keep the doors from blowing into the airplane. I mean, that would be my goal, but I see it as a temporary solution that we nurse along until such time a storm or it just gets weak in its bones and can't hold itself.
Yeah, well,
It all takes money. No, I agree with you, Aaron, as far as any maintenance that we do to that building should be done with a contractor. And the reason is that there's liabilities, like you just said, I'm just repeating what you said, and the fact that there's probably some warranty issues there too on workmanship and that kind of thing. And so it would really be better if we were gonna do that, to do that through a contractor situation. And, but I'm all for repairing that building as best we can for now, and look at over our next 5-year period and try to decide what to do over the next 5-year period. And I think we can do that. That's just my opinion.
We do have, like Aaron said, there is a hangar 5, I believe it is. Is it available now?
yeah, that's empty.
It is empty, okay. And we'll need to make some decisions whether we open that up for rent, or maybe there's some existing tenants that would like to move into that spot
Well,
too. So,
see, now, in this letter, you're stating that the cost, then you're gonna look to come back to the tenants in order to reimburse the city for some of the costs on that?
Not on the initial repairs, the insurance-oriented repairs. It's just, let's say in 6 months, there's a request and people want to put in a new door or something like that. I mean, pick the improvement, right? That would be cost shared with the tenants. Yeah, or that'd be at the tenant's expense. If they didn't want the door put in, we probably wouldn't, but
yeah.
it's just the idea is we're kind of in a minimal investment scenario. That modification has nothing to do with the 44,000. It just would be going forward if there's some desire to put electricity in it, for example. That would have to be agreed by the tenants that they want to do it and they want to pay for it.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because you increased our rent 90%, excuse me, 90% last year. And I was just wondering if now we're looking at, it's gonna go up substantially more if there's some improvement made on it.
And again, the improvements would have to be done by a licensed contractor, we're talking.
Yeah, but there really is a neutral cost to the city, the way I'm understanding it. Right, Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, if you're making the, so I think what I hear you talking about is option 4, which would be do the $44,000 in repairs or minus the door work that was in that bid, and modify the lease and, allow people to stay, not do the demo. And, over time, if a vacancy happens, we don't fill it, because the idea is we're not trying to put more people in there that we have to relocate when it really is time to go through the demo of the thing. And so I think that's, I don't know if that's what you're talking about or what. But.
If we do a 5-year term on this thing, I mean, do we still have to relocate after 5-year notice?
Yeah, yeah. And I don't think you have to say it's an absolutely 5-year. I mean, I think that was just sort of a number that was put in. I think you can always be evaluating where you're at. I mean, if there's another catalytic event or, thing that happens and there's a repair that's needed to be made, but the tenants don't want to, you can always judge, what's best for the building at the time. But I just think people need to know, well, one, we're not going to keep backfilling it and create more of a relocation issue in the future. But you're on a path to eventually having the building go away.
Yeah, my thing is that somewhere in that 5-year period is we can get something going to have modern T-hangers on the other end. That's the whole idea.
Yeah.
And we have to get something going there because it's just, this has been going on too long.
Ed?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions. One, is the insurance settlement that we do the work, or do we get paid, can we take a lump sum? What alternatives are there as far as the monies that the insurance company's offering?
If we do the work, they're willing to pay, up to the 44,000 or our bid amount.
What if you don't
If we
do all
don't
the
do the
work?
work, they're willing to pay us 22,000 for the depreciated value of the
I
building.
don't have mine up. So no matter what amount of work, it's either those two options, the full amount or the 22,000.
If
It's
you
not.
decided to leave it as is and do nothing, they will write you a check for $22,000 and you can
Okay,
put it in the airport fund.
Second question I have, if we do nothing and they have their aircraft in there and the roof collapses, say, in a snowfall or whatever,
Yeah.
are we on the hook? Because we didn't fix it?
Yeah, I don't believe that to be the case. Again, we can certainly ask the city attorney to review that, but generally speaking, the way the lease is currently written is that it's the tenant's responsibility and there's an indemnification that's provided if there's damage and if there is, I mean, I'm not saying there isn't, it wouldn't be that discussion. I mean, there's always that discussion no matter what the lease says. And there'll be an insurance claim made and then they would deal with that at the time,
Well, if it's the tenant's responsibility, then why can't we go ahead and repair the roof on it?
Yeah, just liability reasons. I mean, I think that's the biggest issue. And again, I don't know that there's upside, and I mean, there's no savings to that. If you repair the roof, the league isn't gonna give us 44,000, they'll,
Yeah, you don't want to do that, Doug.
yeah.
You don't want to do it. I'm here to tell you. Because if you drop something on an airplane or something.
Oh,
If you fall off the
it
roof?
just forget it.
No, airplanes would be moved out of it if we
Yeah,
were
I
to do
understand that, but
anything.
you don't want to do it.
Yeah,
I'm here to tell you.
Okay. Okay. Can I get a copy of that letter there?
Yeah,
At
no problem.
At the end of the meeting then? Okay, that's all I got.
Ron?
One more thing. I want to thank the airport commission. I did get reimbursed for that work we did, and I just wanted to thank you for it.
Thank you for
But,
doing it.
yeah, thank you for doing the work, Doug.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I understand Hangar 5 is open, and I'd like to occupy that. Just gives me a little bit more space. I talked to Trina, and she says it was, excuse me, not her decision, but the decision of the Airport Commission. So I'd like to occupy that if that would be okay with the commission, from 3 to 5. That puts me in the end.
So you just want to move?
Yeah.
Just want to move.
Yeah, the roof is a little better, gives me a little bit more space. I'll just go in there and grade it like I did my other spot and fix it all up, but I'd like to just move to that spot if I could.
Okay.
I don't see a reason why.
Yeah, I don't think that's, it should be an issue at all.
Do you need
I'm
a
okay with
motion?
that.
Pardon?
Do you need a motion?
Yeah,
I'll make a motion
Okay.
to allow Ron to move from hangar 3, is it, Ron?
From 3 to 5.
3 to 5.
And I will second that.
Second?
yeah, that's been seconded.
All
Okay.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
If I could speak to the hangar echo issue.
Before,
Sure.
I'm a little concerned. I don't know whether there's a future for me at Forest Lake or not. When we talk about a 5-year lease, that building is as good as Hangar Bravo was 20 years ago. So to say it's got a 5-year lease, life, I would expect it to be able to last longer than that with a bit of repair, substantially longer than 5. But whatever number you pick, as a tenant of that hangar, I am standing back and I'm questioning. I've been involved at the City of Forest Lake Airport for a number of years now. Does the city feel any obligation to myself or the other tenants there? I mean, that's kind of a bottom question. Now, some of the discussion has gone in that direction, but back before any hangars were demolished and there was any paving being done, one of the things that I heard repeatedly is that before we'll tear down the hangars on the south end, we'll have an alternative location for people to, or correction, tear down on the north end, we'll have an alternative for those people to move to the south end. The intent, as I understood it for a decade or more, was that there was going to be T hangars available so that when the hangars got torn down, there was going to be a place for those people to move. Now, it worked out that some of the folks on the commission here built their own hangars and didn't need that spot. Another person sold his airplane and didn't need that spot. But there were still several left in the hangars that were torn down that, well, left. One of them is now building a hangar, but that person lost 3 spots. So I'm very concerned that we determine whether or not there's any obligation or any sequence that's really a responsible thing to adhere to. You know, do you owe some of the tenants the idea of building a T hangar before you decide, well, it's 5 years, it's time to tear it down? So I'm concerned about that. The idea of not keeping it full until it's torn down makes no sense to me at all. The concern here seems to be dollars, 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 dollars. We're watching the city budget and everything is being billed back to the airport, and some of the things that go on are billed to the airport that aren't necessarily airport things as I listen to different conversations. So the idea of not filling all the spaces if you have the opportunity for it, I don't understand that at all. The idea of rewriting a lease, when I hear that, I just, oh my God, okay? I'm watching lawsuits get going. I'm watching city nonsense. I'm seeing, the kindest word I can come up with is shenanigans going on with lease nonsense. And so when somebody says we may have to relook at the lease, and then the real topper that, oh my goodness, I hear we need to hand it to the city attorney, and we've already seen that guy. He doesn't necessarily know much about aviation and how we need to handle things in aviation ends. He can sure write things to keep from liability, but you know, if you don't have anybody ever landing there and you don't ever have anybody in any hangars, you won't have any liability. Wouldn't that be swell? I mean, holy moly. Rewrite a lease, bring the, the reason I stand is because I have these concerns. I'm not going to sit back and in 10 years or 5 years or next year, when I get booted out, I'm not going to walk away saying, well, I never said anything and maybe I should have. Perhaps I'm off on a tangent here, but none of the things that I'm speaking to tonight are fresh. To my knowledge, these have all been discussed, and I've seen turmoil within the city and within the airport and within the Airport Commission over these very topics. So I'm highly concerned. So I encourage you to move very cautiously, especially when you talk about rewriting leases and dragging that city attorney in. I hope you'll step very cautiously about that.
Jim, I'd like to answer to one thing. The 5-year thing that I'm proposing is something during that time to make a decision. It's not a cut and dried ending at that 5-year period. That's not what I was implying.
Awesome. I respect that. I thank you for that. However, I don't think that all the persons sitting before me have that same interpretation.
The other thing-
That's not what I'm hearing.
The other thing too, as far as building T hangars, somebody's got to step up and says, yeah, I have the wherewithal to do that.
And you-
right now, the appetite for the city to do it is zero.
I understand. And you and I have spoken in some detail to
That's
that
right.
possibility. Sure.
So, you know, somebody, maybe some private investor or somebody that is willing to do that, to build those hangars and maybe build in groups of 5 or whatever the case may be.
So
But,
I
it has to
appreciate
be-
that.
It has to be part of the plan. However, the other thing you got to understand, if somebody builds new T hangars out there, the rent you're paying now,
It'll be more.
oh my God.
A lot more.
Yeah, it'll
Yeah.
be 3 times that, I bet, you know?
Well-
Because new construction is really expensive, so everybody has to understand that. And a new building is expensive.
So with that in mind, then that makes the idea, if you place a value on the tenants in that building now, then it isn't a matter of how much can you get out of them and how much can you spend on that, how much can you charge them more in their lease to cover the maintenance on this building. The tenants of that building, to my knowledge, are basically asking for a roof that doesn't leak and perhaps burying a line back there so we can have electrical power. Not a lot more. Are the tenants there worth 3 times as much to keep them at the airport? Do you care if they're there buying gas? Do you care if they're there being involved? I mean, you got a pretty good view. I mean, at least 50% of the people who have a stake in that building are present. I mean, and if you stop out at the airport on Saturday morning, you'll probably see 1 or 2 of them, or on Sunday, you'll probably see 1 of them, maybe 2. So these are, I would hope you would view the people there as good tenants and willing to do a fair amount to keep them. Some of that has been witnessed by assisting, in my case, to help pick up some rocks next to the runway. That's helpful. But I encourage you to assess and determine a consensus, because your statement about we'll make the decision over the next 5 years what we'll do, as opposed to my hearing, some of what I'm hearing tonight is 5 years is the end. So perhaps I'm misreading that, but I would encourage you to go forward with caution and consensus. And consensus may be asking a lot with the turmoil that I've seen. Any other question to me, Tim?
Oh, that's it, Jim. And we have looked into bringing electricity to that building. Just to get the power to the building is about $11,000.
Okay.
That's a pretty big chunk of change that we looked at.
Yeah, and if there were cost sharing and perhaps cost sharing through shared labor, that may be a possibility as well. For instance, I don't think you necessarily need a contractor to dig a trench. And that may be a way in which some persons may be willing to help advance this. But frankly, I with some of the things that have occurred, I have some concern that if we bring electricity over there, I'll be paying a higher rent because now it's electric, even though the city maybe didn't put any money in to putting in the electric. So I understand the city wants to get its money back out if they're going to invest something into it. Anyway, I hope you'll work from a consensus, and I hope you'll work cautiously toward that consensus. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Well, Ed?
Now, question, if something catastrophic happens to that building because, A, we didn't repair it, are we in a relocation situation then for the tenants? Or is that covered under insurance?
So if you elected to basically keep the structure as is, yeah, I think you're in a situation where you're relocating people, yeah. And then you're not having, I mean, obviously, if you accept the depreciated value of the structure, you know, the ability then to go back and do that again, you know, even if there's further damage. I mean, you're basically saying, we're not anticipating that we're going to have this structure and we're moving toward demolition with it.
And my second question, are we in a staggered lease situation in that building? If somebody comes in halfway through the year and there's an empty one now and we lease it,
The rent is monthly.
it's monthly no matter what,
Calendar
right?
year too.
Yeah, and so you're in a situation where that can certainly be accommodated if someone comes in mid-year. I think we've done that before.
But I mean, we could do a month to month on a vacant hangar.
I think all the
So that you
leases
don't
right
get
now are
into-
pretty much month to month.
But I mean, to avoid the relocation situation.
It's unavoidable, even on a month-to-month lease. yeah.
Okay. Even if the lease expires at the end of the month and you don't renew?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So it's a matter of, excuse me, go ahead, Sam.
Well, I was just gonna say too, having an empty, I agree with Jim, I mean, having one empty doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. If we're gonna, try to, and as far as, I mentioned a 5-year thing, because what I'm saying is that over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, we gotta take action. The decisions are done, and we gotta take some kind of action on getting that T-hanger there.
I agree.
And so, I don't, and I think if we have the building repaired, it is gonna be better than what was down there in the other old hangars, they were even worse. And I think we should have it repaired, and I think, with the idea that we're gonna take some kind of action between now and the end of a 5-year period.
So the philosophy on not adding, additional tenants is that whenever the determination is made to no longer use the building, if it's year 4, year 8, whatever the time frame is, you've then minimized your relocation, requirement just by attrition, as opposed to having to go through that process and.
Yeah, but the thing of it is, if you're moving them from the north end to the south end, that cost would be really minimal.
You still have, when we went through the process previously, the cost is
The cost is the cost.
not significant for the individual. It's significant for the process. And
Process,
so it's,
Boy.
I mean, some of these, I can
More
go back
bureaucracy.
The attorney gets the money.
I can go back and give you the information on what each person was actually provided. And in a relocation situation, it's not necessarily the tenant doesn't have to relocate south. They could say, well, I'm going to go to a different airport, and then you're dealing with that too. And it's not mandatory, even if there is another opportunity, even if there's a T-hanger there today. So it can be variable, but the lion's share of the expenses in the process.
So the guy's got a license to steal, that's what we're hearing.
Well, yeah,
Jeez.
the government's created that license.
I mean, it averaged, what, about $8,000 a person up there for the,
Yeah, it was
More bureaucracy.
At $125 a month, it's gonna take 3 years of rent just to pay for each relocation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the philosophy you're dealing with there. Yeah.
Aaron, let's say we built new T-hangers. I don't care where they are, north end, south end, doesn't matter. We built new T-hangers, and the new T-hangers are priced at $110 a month. Just check, bear with me. So at the end of the year, we asked we asked the tenants in Hangar E to sign a new lease. And we say, we have these T-hangers available to you, they're brand new, they're $110 a month. Or you can stay in Hangar Echo for $165 a month. Well, what will happen? They'll all want to go to the new hangar. The relocation is accomplished at zero cost. Wouldn't
If they
that
make
work?
the decision, the relocation kicks in when you make the decision to no longer have the structure. So if someone makes a decision voluntarily, I'm gonna
Right,
go
there's no
wherever,
cost.
I'm gonna build my own hangar, whatever, relocation is not applicable. Relocation would kick in if we make a decision to demo the building and they have to relocate. In that instance, if they were going to a lower rent option, let's say it's in someone else's hangar, they're kind of subleasing, or into a cheaper option, that's available on site, the relocation amount would be pretty de minimis because your rent isn't going to increase. It's just whatever it takes you to get from A to B, and then the consultant expense.
It's the consultant's expense, but
Ron?
it's a good idea.
This is pertaining to like the conversation about T-hangers. I've had conversations with a few of you on the board. And I think regardless of what it takes, to have an introductory space for somebody to start into aviation is important. Now, I've exhausted my options, and I've tried to do it delicately as far as finding a space that I can build a hangar. And I've had a conversation where, what would it take for somebody on the private side to build the T-hangars? And if somebody does that, can the commission in any way, the city in any way, because the city and the airport's gonna benefit from that. Is there any way that he can be, I don't wanna use the word subsidized, but TIF, taxes on his property or what he's gonna pay for that ground space? versus what he is also trying to provide for other tenants at the airport. Just throwing it on the table. Can anything be done to make it advantageous for a person to pursue building T hangars out there?
That's a whole nother topic, I mean, that we gotta get
Well,
into.
I just got to throw it out there.
Right, I mean, we gotta deal with what we got on hand here first, I think.
The short answer, I think, would be no, though, Ron. Boy, that'd be a tough one.
Well, I would like to make a motion that we repair it with the $44,000. Leave the lease as is. And
continue to.
and go forward with our leases without renewing the lease space as we go, as we lose tenants.
I'll second that motion.
You mean without ever just letting it go dry by itself? You wouldn't lease out to a place that was open?
No, right, without renewing the lease on the people that leave,
Without releasing it.
releasing the spot.
So you're just gonna plan obsolescence on the thing and you'll have everybody gone
Well, sooner or
eventually?
later, the building's sooner or later, the building's gonna be obsolete.
Right, but if we put that kind of money in it and put a new roof on it, what's the life expectancy of it? I can't see any reason that it wouldn't sit there for 20 years again.
Well, a storm comes along and blows the siding.
Well, but
off.
that's gonna come back on a new one or anything else. If a storm comes along, they don't give a damn whether they run down an old building or a new one. The storm's gonna run it down.
Okay. You'd like to amend the motion?
I don't want to see it not rented out if somebody needs to move to Forest Lake and put an airplane in it. And if it's there, I don't see any reason to demolish it. If we're going to put money into it and fix it up, then I don't see another alternative short of relocating everybody and kicking their ass out of town. It don't make any sense.
Well, we're gonna have T hangers out here.
But
Before long.
that's fine. But when they come, those people still have to rent from them, and they don't maybe want to pay that kind of money to put their airplane in it. So there might always be a usage for that type of a hangar. And I see it all over the country.
Okay,
I hear that Mr. Shipp wants to modify your motion so that we will continue to lease out spaces. Do we need a second on that for parliamentary procedure so that we vote on the amendment first, or do we just simply amend the motion so that we continue to lease out spaces?
let's have more discussion on the amendment. Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned, I'd like to see it that we're still leasing out those empty spaces if we're gonna put that kind of money into it. I mean, it is insurance and all that, but, you know, just by putting a new roof on that building, it's gonna strengthen it immensely. And, you know, by putting it together with screws or whatever they do nowadays, and I just hate to see these spaces go empty. I think we should be able to.
Well, it's definitely income, there's no doubt. Ed?
Yeah.
And, go ahead, Doug.
I would like to see, I mean, to me, this has come up this evening, and rather than just jump in and vote on something, I would like to see a workshop and more discussion as to what the options are, and instead of just being under the gun to pick one. And that's me.
This is a recommendation of the council, correct? That's what this motion is, okay. Number one. Number two, there are other issues that are gonna have to get taken care of in hangar building E in order, two that come to my mind is the middle hangar, Ron's current hangar. The doors are extremely weak. I'm not aware of repairs that were done to that. Doug or Ron, were they? On three?
Yeah, we repaired it.
Oh, you did? I was not aware.
I got some steel from Winning Supply that I don't need it, I'm gonna use to help reinforce.
Okay, so they haven't been reinforced yet, but you've got a
I
plan for
have
it.
reinforced, but we're gonna.
Do more.
do one
Okay,
step better.
all right. So I wasn't aware of that. Number two is there's a drainage problem that at the 11th hour, we chose to keep hangar E. We didn't know the huge land, we didn't know what kind of drainage issues were gonna happen. And we've got some drainage corrections we'll have to do for anybody that's on that south-facing side, especially in hangar E. So I think until we make sure some of these things are corrected, we shouldn't try to lease that spot out. So, and if you talk to the engineers, The engineers want to dig another hole to get the water to move to it, and, which adds a lot more expense. So I think for the time being, I'm fine with the motion that says we don't start renting stalls that have been vacated until such time we've validated the building, we've validated the drainage, and we've validated that the doors are in good working order. So,
On that drainage issue, you know, this last spring, I took a shovel and dug a little trench and drained out 90% of the water that was standing there.
Right.
So it's not like it's a big issue, it's resolved.
No, and I'm not suggesting that we should follow the engineer's recommendation. What I'm suggesting is that we need to make sure that we have a solution in place, and that trench helps, and we've had other rains that have created, you know, that pond back there. So I just think we should have something in place before we just go ahead and rent the vacant spot right now.
Okay, we've got two amendments. We've got Rick as amended and
No, I made a second to your motion.
Correct. The amendment was by Mr. Ship to continue to lease the spaces. Mr. Eigner, I think, is also requesting that we have a workshop on this instead and table. the
I'm
issue.
questioning whether this evening we come up with the right recommendation without more further discussion.
so you'd like.
Because it is affecting, obviously, the people that are in that hangar. And the relocation seems to be a major factor that would affect the city if we are in that situation.
Yeah, that's why I don't know why why it's an issue to make a recommendation. I mean, but the only hang-up I have with the recommendation or the motion is the fact that I think we should be renting all those spaces. I think those other issues are easily taken care of.
Aaron,
Hence-
excuse me, I'm sorry.
That's all
Aaron, if you were to rent the spaces, what impact does that have if we are on month to month as far as relocation? You'd still be in the same situation, right?
Correct,
It doesn't matter.
right.
The way I see it, the relocation thing is going to occur on two different occasions. It's going to occur if you just decide to tear down the building, period, or even if you have a new T-hanger built on the other end and you decide to move down there. You're going to this is going to be the same issue, either way.
It always triggers when you
Displace somebody.
displace, yeah, when you elect to no longer provide the opportunity to lease.
But if you built the new T-hanger building, you're still facing the same situation as now, as what do you do with this building? And if you choose to relocate, then you're in the relocation.
That's
Yes,
correct.
yes,
That's
again.
the philosophy behind not adding future leases, because you kind of, reduce your exposure there. You might not eliminate it because there may be people there that are there now all the way through that period of time, but the impact will be less.
Could you quantify less? Is it $700 if one guy isn't in hangar 5 in the end? Because as we stated earlier, the majority is the administrative overhead cost, not the cost per tenant. So to help clarify for Mr. Eigner, aren't we really talking about the difference in the process if there's even one tenant left in Hangar Echo? If by not filling it and giving the city about $1,500 a year, in the end, the city will save about $700 for not having that tenant in the last spot.
No, it's
No,
it's more than that,
About
for sure.
$5,000 a tenant.
I didn't, I don't know what all the others receive, but I know the total amount for the 3 bays, which I had in the other building, was not at that rate. It was less than that.
No, what I'm saying is the cost for the consultant to do the work, to follow the laws that the government have in place for relocation, plus the payouts are roughly $5,000 per.
If we took the total cost, divided it by the total number, yes. If we took the total cost and divided by one remaining tenant in Hangar Echo, it's virtually the same cost.
No, the consulting expense is per relocation, so, if there's 5, the consulting expense would be larger. If there's 1, it'd be smaller, it's,
So he gets basically 5 consulting fees for 5.
Yeah, right.
4 for 4.
Yeah.
If we had the whole building but one tenant empty, he'd get 1 consulting fee.
right.
The amendment I'm sorry to interrupt, the amendment should be decided first so that you know which motion you're voting on. So the amendment would be to continue to lease spaces. That's Mr. Shipp's amendment. You'd vote that up or down first, and then we would examine the original motion, which is the motion to repair at $44,000, do not change the lease and not lease out new spaces, or lease out new spaces, depending on how Mr. Shipp's amendment reads. I don't know what to do with Mr. Eigner's suggestion
You can
unless you...
eliminate mine completely from
Are you sure?
positive.
Okay.
Okay.
So then the motion would be to either, the vote would be either to amend the motion to continue to lease out spaces or not. That would be the vote.
So, Sam, maybe you can help here. First of all, I don't know if Don, did you wanted to amend the motion? Is that right, Don?
I don't want to see the motion go through and have us plan obsolescence out there and kick all these people out
I
and then
understand
worry
that.
about what we
Okay,
have
but
to
that's-
do.
No, I understand that, but you wanted to amend the motion.
Yes.
That's what it takes,
Okay,
yes.
so then my question is to amend the motion, those that made the motion, Sam, do they have to agree to the amendment?
As far as I know, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So Chair, members of the commission, so in this case, you can amend motions in two ways. One is a friendly amendment that the motioner and the seconder agree to. The other is by making a motion that is seconded. I don't know that happened in this particular case.
That's correct.
But making a motion that is seconded, and then you're obligated to vote the motion up or down, and then you then revert back to the original motion as amended or not amended.
The original amendment has been seconded. I did the second.
The original.
The original one, but Mr. Shipp's has not yet been seconded.
Say again?
Mr. Shipp, your motion is to continue to lease out spaces. That's your,
Right.
right, that is your amendment, but it has not been seconded
I'll
yet.
second it.
There we go. That answers that. Thank you.
We'll take a vote on the amendment. All in favor of,
Continuing to lease.
to continue the lease?
You're talking about Don's amendment?
Right.
Okay.
Those who are,
Continue
My
leasing.
my vote is aye.
and Mr. Eigner,
No.
Mr. Shipp,
You're voting.
Aye.
in favor, yeah, you're voting in favor of it. Mr.
Aye.
Dahlbeck and Mr. Ashback.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes and 1 no. So the motion is amended to continue to lease out new spaces.
Okay. Back to the original.
The original motion now reads, motion to repair at $44,000 Hangar Echo, do not change the lease and continue to lease out new spaces.
And I would like, Tim, if
Go ahead.
I just think we need to make sure it says recommend to the council, make a recommendation to the
thank you.
council.
So noted.
If Tim is willing to accept that.
I am willing to accept that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So exactly what are we voting on now?
The motion is to recommend to council that we make the repair at $44,000. We do not change the lease, and we continue to lease out new spaces. That is the motion.
Okay, and that was seconded by who?
And that was seconded by Mr. Ashback. It was modified by Mr. Shipp to continue to lease new spaces. I can read it again if you'd like.
No, we have to do that.
We'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
All opposed.
0. Okay, thank you.
Okay, item number 7. Enhanced safety area rock removal. We went and picked rocks on the 14th, and we got about a truck and a half load full, and most of them came out of the new dirt that was put out in front of the hangar area. I found that the safety area was in very good shape, with the exception, there's a few dips and ruts in there, which Dave from the city has gone out there with the tiller and tilled some of that up and re-leveled it and cleaned it up. So we'll seed that next spring, and that area should be in pretty good shape, I'm thinking. And Jim, have you looked at what that was tilled?
We have a new supply of rocks to be picked.
Oh, do we now?
They were returned to the top, and there's a bunch.
Okay.
Okay,
So we'll for sure want to address it prior to the grass sprouting in the spring, certainly before that.
okay.
We can have
We'll go.
good access and release.
We will plan on doing that in the spring, picking some more rocks. Okay, item number 8. A lot discussion on DeLong's hangar.
Yeah, why did that come up again? I don't quite understand.
Chairman's Commission, there was a request to evaluate compliance with that lot. And I did talk to Erica, or at least talked over email, and you know, they have not, she has not currently pulled a building permit. The indication is that the middle of November, that's planned to take place, and so there was just a request made to me to have the commission discuss compliance with the no build, or the build requirement within the lease. And, you know, Erica has given us the indications, you know, that is the plan. You've approved the plans. I've received some correspondence from their contractor indicating that they intend to start here. You know, it's kind of a winter build, and so I don't have any reason to believe that that is not on track. And, you know, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, well, I do know they had it surveyed and staked.
Right.
And I did talk to the contractor, who happened to be Walters Buildings, and it's, as far as they're concerned, it's a go.
Right.
And so, as far as I'm concerned, they're meeting that requirement. And
Have
so-
they, is there a permit or not?
Not at this point, but the indication is that that she will be getting that in the middle of November. So, you know, in my mind, and this will probably play into the discussion here as we you know, talk about item 11. But in my mind, once you pull a building permit, you've basically complied with the build requirement, and it appears that we're on track for that. So.
And that's always the thing too. I mean, I know it's an ongoing thing. When I talked to her, that there was all set with the bank and all that, so it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's a go, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Good evening.
Hi, I'm Paula DeLong. I'm Erica's wife.
Yes.
So, just to speak on that, we did meet with the builder, and I'm just going to read Erica's notes here because she's working right now. So we did order the hangar this week, and it's, they know that we are trying to have a permit pulled by the middle here of November. So right now, it's currently fast-tracking the information to be able to pull that permit. We're waiting on the engineering, the blueprint, so that we can do that build permit. And let's see, what else does she have?
did you put money down on the building?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah, money's down, it's been staked.
The reason I
We're meeting-
ask that is that a lot of times, nothing else happens until that happens.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that-
money's down on it, so we're meeting with the bank here. It's all in plan to take occupancy here the beginning of May of 2018. So that's our goal with all the winter building stuff.
And at this point, you don't have plans, or do you know what's being actually built out there? I know Erica had talked about a building with a lean-to off the front of it, kind of.
Yeah, we're going with a 60 by 60. So just a standard hangar.
So it'd be just a square hangar out there?
Yep, just a square. It's staked for it and stuff, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I'd make a motion that, that we allow this project to move forward as per plan, and if you want some sort of a safety net, to make sure that by our next meeting, we'll know whether or not there's been a permit at least applied for.
Right.
Last permit I applied for, it took 5 weeks, so, you know, that's why there has to be some conversation about that. But that's part of my motion, that, you know, to satisfy any concerns that the city might have, that the permit is at least applied for before the next airport commission meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
The motion is that we allow the plan to move forward as presented, and that the permit is applied for within, 5 weeks, is what you said?
No, I just said, I just wanted to make sure that the permit was at least applied for between now and our next
meeting.
commission.
I'm
meeting.
sorry. Thank you. Next airport commission meeting. Thank you.
What I did comment was the last permit application I had and took 5
5
weeks.
weeks.
And I will second that. Any discussion?
Just a point of clarification. We've got money down on the build. Is that correct?
Correct.
we have the cart before the horse, and wouldn't you get an approved permit before you put money down?
Not
No.
necessarily, because they won't even finish the drawings unless they.
So, just to clear it up for me, what's the holdup? Is the city holding this up?
No, Chairman's Commission, so we received an email from Mr. Schmidt inquiring whether.
You specify which one that is.
Mr. Ron Schmidt.
Thank you.
Sorry. Inquiring whether this lot was in compliance, and so brought it forward to you to make that assessment. And the question, always on the lots that are currently not in compliance, what is compliance? And where does that point trigger? And in this particular case, my personal opinion is if you are you've applied for a building permit or in the process of receiving a building permit, you're invested enough in the process at that point. We don't get into whether they've dealt with their builder, paid their builder. That's really not our thing. And that's not anything for us. That's real demonstrable.
But we're saying she has not applied?
They've not applied for the permit, but the indication is that they will apply for it in the middle of the month. And so we aren't actively pursuing, non-compliance on these. We've discussed it a number of times. People, based on their indications to us, have all seemed like they're on a path to compliance. And so, it's generally, in my mind, it feels like it's a resolved issue. It's just a question of, if you were going to make a finding of non-compliance with the build requirement in the lease, what is that? Is it has to be built, so therefore you're non-compliant? So I don't think that's reasonable at this point. And I just think in my own personal opinion, my recommendation to you is, your litmus test really is a building permit applied for in the process of being issued? I mean, at that point, you're invested in it enough. You have timeframes within the building permit process in which to complete the work. And it's on a track from that point. And if for whatever reason they don't complete the work and can, in the timeframes established for your building permit, well, then you can discuss whether the thing's in compliance or not. But that's really the question. Yeah, you really don't even need to act on this tonight. It's just brought forward for your discussion.
Well, I think we should. I think that I made my motion to cover this thing so we can move on.
Yeah.
And I think it is covered with that. Permit is applied for between now and the next airport commission meeting, which would be in December. Then, as far as I'm concerned, they're in compliance. And I think the motion's been seconded. Did you second
It
it?
has been seconded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Question, is that the same, and maybe you can answer it, John, is that the same time frame you were under?
Actually, coincidentally, it is.
Then I have no problem.
Okay, call question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Oh, there is one other thing too. The way that building is staked, it looks like it's gonna be set back from the other ones in that, down the taxiway. So I don't know, is that something we wanna look at, pulling it
I think-
forward?
yeah, you're right. I think we'd want it, so the front is flush with the rest.
Flush with the rest of the buildings.
Was there a reason not?
Being flush.
Have Erica call me.
Okay.
The way it's staked out,
He's working with that, so I really don't have the answers for that.
But we'll get that squared away.
Okay.
Does that have anything to do with, you said an extension on the building?
It has to do with clearances when you're taxing.
No, I get that, but
Okay.
what, didn't this plan call for some external structure on the building?
Not the new one.
Changed it.
No.
Okay.
No, just a
I
square.
thought maybe that's why it's set back, to make room for that.
No, they're
Structure.
gonna build a 60 by 60 box, like, so,
Yeah, the biggest you can build on that lot is 60 by 63.
yeah.
But it's set back, I'm gonna guess it's set back about 8 feet from being flush with the rest of the buildings, the way it's
Yeah,
staked.
I would think we'd want that.
From yours, Tim? Your
No,
side,
from the
or-
taxiway.
The
Taxiway.
taxiway.
Parallel to the runway, yeah.
Okay.
And
The
taxiway.
runway being
So it'd be
set
the
back,
front.
so you say it should be flush with how yours is, right?
With all of them are in,
No, flush along the taxiway that, in the row you're in.
Okay.
I
Have
can
them call
draw,
me, have her call me, I'll
Yeah, yeah.
meet her up.
Sam, are you working with Walters on that building?
Not
Or-
really, no.
Okay.
Yeah, what I've been doing for Walters is if they happen to put in a higher power door or something like that. So that's-
Well, that's something we definitely, when they.
Oh, yeah, right. And
We should look at it.
I'll talk to, I can talk to Kurt?
Okay, item number 9, airport engineering services.
Chair, members of the commission, so as you're aware, our current airport engineer is SEH, and we are in the process of going through some litigation with them based on the airport paving project, and the council's been more engaged with that discussion, and so I'm not going to go into the specific details, on all that, other than to say, we're attempting to recover the amount that, is outstanding with the dirt overage that MnDOT did not cover. We did execute the grant agreement with MnDOT, however, for the portion that they were willing to cover, so that issue has been moved forward. So we do have about $400,000 that we're attempting to recover there. And we're also going to assert a claim on the design, and I can talk more about that under the CIP discussion. But needless to say, we're looking tonight to make a recommendation to you to move forward with a different airport engineer. Obviously, we're sort of in a conflict-oriented process with our current engineer, and probably aren't going to be able to work together going forward on things. And so we'll probably have to talk to them about how we close out and provide final resolution to the paving project. And we're still conversational, but I think we've kind of reached a point in the discussions where it makes sense for us to look at another option here. And what I'm recommending to you this evening is to appoint Bolton and Mink as the airport engineer. I did provide a summary of some of their qualifications. We currently utilize them for general civil engineering for the city, so they are the city's engineer. They do a fantastic job in that capacity. One of the challenges we have had in the past is sort of tripping over what's a civil city issue and an airport issue, and so to the extent that there's some potential for integration, I think that that's a positive thing. I'd also say they have a number of airports where they've done work, and a really good airport practice group, and so there is a summary of some of their qualifications. Silas Parmar would be the primary engineer assigned here. You can see on page 4 of the qualifications his background, and of course Ryan Goodman, being our city engineer, also has got a kind of a point of contact established. I provided you with a draft master agreement that has not been reviewed in detail at this point, but it is similar to what we currently have for our city engineering agreement that basically just kind of lays out a couple, probably the two important things from your perspective in this, and ultimately, again, this will be a recommendation of the city council, but the two important things, one is the first 10 hours of the month, which we don't typically bill that much, are actually billed at $75 per hour, and then after that it's $140 per hour. But generally speaking, when we're in a routine mode, we haven't tended to bill that much per month. So you can discuss how you want to use them in the future. Probably no different than what you have done with SEH. The second relevant component is they do provide a provision in here that says they're not going to charge for getting up to speed on our airport operations. So a lot of times, it takes time to understand the airport layout plan and some other items, and so they basically commit to doing that at their cost and getting the electronic files put in a format at their expense. And so from that perspective, it's generally positive. So we'll review this on a more detailed basis before it gets presented to the council, but just want to answer any questions you have, receive any feedback, and then ultimately request you to consider a motion to designate Bolton and Mink as the airport engineer.
Did you need that motion tonight, Aaron?
No, I don't know that you need it tonight. I just think at some point, we do need to have guidance. For example, we're preparing the CIP now. That we'll talk about that in a second, but that's due in February. Things like that. We do need some guidance. We've been using them kind of on an informal basis to give us some guidance as we go through our discussions with SEH and so on. So, I don't know that it'd be something I'd want to have hang out there forever, but I feel really comfortable with this group. I think they'll do a good job. you know, we had a really positive experience on the city engineering side of things, and I would expect that that would translate to the airport engineering as well.
Aaron, are we under contract right now with SEH till when?
I don't think we have a specific agreement with them. That isn't something we can terminate readily. Are you aware?
Typically, it's year to year, on the
Yeah.
first year or what?
I don't know that we have one.
I think it's been quite a few years since we actually had an engineering
I
agreement.
thought we had to
That
vote
was
on it last-
non-project
Was
related.
it last year we had to vote to continue on
No,
with that?
that, you know, Matt Zitka was the last guy that was here when this stuff was discussed that I can remember.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I've only missed one meeting in the last 10 years, and that's the only one I can remember even talking about it.
Does making this change let SEH off of any of their screw-ups that they've done and their responsibility for them?
No. I mean, we're obviously we're pursuing that, but no, I mean, ultimately, we're pursuing that in a different venue at this point.
Rick, you've been involved with this over the past, how many other options do we really have, I mean, out there?
Well, there's other engineers. One of the concerns I've had all along, a couple of years ago, Ryan talked to me about their services, airport services, and the concern I've had is if there's been problems where cities with airports and the city engineers, they don't get the aviation side involved with the decision, so therefore the decision that's made isn't aviation related, it's road related, for example. And it's been on my mind since I've heard this problem many years ago, and Ryan has assured me 2 years ago that wouldn't happen, and I know when everything started coming together with the problems we have today, I asked him again, and he said, no, he said, whenever there's airport-related items, they work with the airport division, and they don't try to save the cost and eliminate that contact. And that's very important, because aviation isn't the same as the road transportation, and we have to make sure that we, that we don't lose sight of regulations and other issues that come up from an airport-related standpoint. So, as far as other engineering firms, there's bigger ones, smaller ones, individuals. I've not heard anything that would concern me not to move forward with Bolton Mink.
Ed?
One of the things then I can testify to in dealing with Ryan on the council, and he does an excellent job at pursuing grant money on projects. We've received a lot of money grant-wise for the city, and that's thanks to Ryan. The man does I don't know how he keeps it all straight, but he's got a lot of balls in the air, and he follows through and dots all the I's and cross all the T's, and like I said, it's paid off well for the city. And everything he does, and he won't be the one we're dealing with, but he is very responsive to when we have questions or we choose not to go ahead with a project. He works well with the city is what I'm trying to say, that we've had other engineering groups that this is the way it's got to be and you don't have much input. He allows a great deal of input. I should say their firm does.
Is it a situation that we would want to meet with the representative from them and have a discussion with them, just kind of,
I think that'd be a great idea.
just to kind of feel things out and see what direction it?
We can certainly do that, but I'm strongly convinced that we need a change.
Well,
I mean, I think there was
I agree.
an issue. Now we're fighting with these people to try to get money that they had stood right here and admitted was their issue. And all of a sudden, we got to fight them in court to get this to happen, and it's enough is enough. And I know Don's concern is that you fire an engineer and then they just kind of wash their hands of it. And so we got to be careful there, but I have no problem with Bolton Mink. I have to agree with Ed on the thorough explanations of what's going on in the city, and I know that he's the road guy and that kind of thing, but this is a completely different division of the same company, so I have no qualms with hiring Bolton Mink. And if you want to meet those people, I have no qualms about that either. But I think it'd be a good step forward.
Don?
I agree with that. I just don't want to give away anything that we can keep S&H responsible for.
Right. Do you want to meet with these people, or do we want to take a vote on this, make a motion and vote here? Or?
I was just looking for the termination clause here in case they're bound to them for year in and year out. And termination says this agreement may be terminated by either party for any reason for convenience by either party upon 30 days written notice. So if for some reason we had some conflicts with their engineering style or their team, it looks pretty clear that we can jump out of it because they're overcharging us or over.
We can certainly meet with these people, but I have no qualms about hiring Bolton and Mank. And, if it takes that, I'd make a motion that we go with Aaron's recommendation.
Was that a motion, Sam?
That's a motion.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion? Ed?
Yeah, the other thing I'd like to say is our present engineering firm, not only are we in litigation because of the cost overrun, but from what we're talking to all the aviation people that are using the runway, the final product is less than satisfactory as far as elevations and safety. Is that a correct statement? So, I mean, not only did they miscalculate how much it's going to cost, the design, there seems to be some design issues out there that are also their responsibility. And what frustrates me more than anything is how many times they came in front of this commission and the council, and all the way through the project, there were no issues, no issues, no issues. Everything's on track. Everything's good. It's not going to go over budget. And look what we end up with. So I have no qualms about getting rid of them.
Husnick Ashback motion to designate Bolton Menk as airport engineering services. I'll read that again because I screwed it up. The motion is Husnick Ashback motion to designate Bolton Menk for airport engineering services.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Airport CIP. Rick, you made some updated changes on that recently?
I have not. An email was sent to me through the city. I got all excited when I saw the deadline of October 31st, and I was looking for some wiggle room with Dan Boehner at MnDOT Aeronautics, and he replied saying, well, that's for federal funding. State funding deadlines are February 1st. So pretty sure I sent that out to everybody, so I haven't made it.
I've been so busy, I haven't had a chance to even go through it.
So I think I did send the CIP out to everybody, and I believe I've sent the email out that we didn't have such a bad, big deadline or a quick deadline to handle it. I would suggest that our December meeting, at the latest, our January meeting, that we're going to have to reorganize dates and commitments for projects that we have, and we may need to remove or add some projects as well. So I would think that we put it on, well,
Let's put it on next month's agenda.
that's my thought.
And how does SEH affect our CIP at all, or doesn't it?
Your Honor, I mean, at times, if you're looking for estimates, depending on whether you're comfortable with the CIP as it's currently constructed, or if you wanted to have something evaluated, a lot of times they would provide a construction estimate or recommendations on things that they think might be priority. I would also interject, again, just based on the, kind of the evolution of our litigation, one of the things we're going to be pursuing as a claim is a design defect, and that's something the council's talked about in closed session, but one of the potential remedies for that, whether it's achieved in litigation or through the CIP or both, or however, we marry those processes up concurrently. One of the things that the Bolton and Mink Airport engineer provided to us in advance of being designated, just working with us to help us understand what's conventional, what should have been done, and what maybe wasn't done, is the installation of about 3,000 extra feet of drain tile that I guess in their estimation really should have been included in the original project, given the flat grades between the taxiway and the runway. And so that we prepared a project estimate. They've prepared a project estimate for that, and with engineering and estimated project cost, we're looking at about $210,000 project. So the extent that you put that in the CIP as a standalone improvement, you have the potential to then do that and seek cost sharing from MnDOT for that project. My recommendation to you would be to consider putting that in the 18 or 19 CIP, I guess. Fiscal year 18 for the state, I think is how it works. I don't know, it's always weird. But fiscal year 18 for the state, concurrent with that, we're pursuing that on our litigation track as well. But seems like it warrants a dual track consideration, so.
And that's to put additional drain tile on the east side?
Just to extend the current drain tile, yeah.
Yep, okay.
So the idea then, as far as the CIP is concerned, to kind of have this looked over pretty good so we can discuss it for the next meeting. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. I'll email it out again.
As far as the CIP is concerned, Aaron, do any of these CIP projects that we're looking at, will they dovetail into our comp plan that we are now also under review? Should we be considering that, or is that too far out?
You know, I don't know that it's a strong consideration. I mean, the airport component is a piece of the comp plan, but there's a few parcels in the later years that are contemplated for acquisition. So to the extent that you're looking at what could happen on those parcels, that's certainly a factor. But most of these are pretty operational types of improvements that are contemplated. So I don't think it's a huge item that way.
Okay, well, let's put it on next month.
On the agenda.
On the agenda. Anything else on airport CIP? Okay, moving on. Item number 11, Mr. Schmidt's hangar plans request for approval.
I'd just like to make a comment about that. I mean, I'm the one that asked to have it tabled last meeting because I just wanted to make sure that, John had everything in line. I mean, there was some issues with, it's not our job to ask for engineering and that kind of thing. It's just except for the fact that I wanted to make sure he was serious about starting this job, period. Because John will admit this, I mean, we're going to start next spring, but that's been going on for 3 or 4 years, okay?
Mr. Husnick's recommendation last month was the best thing to happen to me.
Yeah.
Here's why.
Okay.
Here's why. Mr. Husnick went to the same company that I was going to. They could not provide him engineered plans for this foundation. He had to go get his own engineering plans and build that foundation himself. And only he had the ability to do that. I couldn't do the same thing that he does because I'm not a builder as he is. So I went and I called the company. I said, I need engineering plans in 1 month. Can you do this? And they couldn't give me an answer. So his experience with that, I'm not kidding. Call him up. So his experience with that was the right way to go. I've got engineered drawings right here.
Yeah, what happened, John was talking about building the same hangar we built, and I told you the problem we had it engineered, and believe it or not, I can't use the same engineering for another building. Because it's like a copyright thing.
Correct.
And so that was an issue, and the guy had some, I don't even know if they're in business anymore, if they even rubber stamp it. Because he got.
Recharge you, that's all they do.
Well, he had some issues with the IRS too. Fact is, we were getting letters from the IRS after we paid them that if we owed them any other money, to send it directly to them. So we didn't want to do business with them anymore.
Sam, thank you. That was
Anyways,
right thing.
Okay, moving on. We've got a Walters building here.
yep,
It is 70 feet wide, John?
Correct. By
And
60 deep.
By 60 deep, okay.
It meets the requirements for overhangs. It has 2-foot overhangs all the way around. It meets the requirements for color. I was not able to bring a color card with me tonight. It has the exact same colors as the Skydive Forest Lake hangar.
Okay. And we're 19.6 on a sidewall?
Correct.
John, I got to ask you the same question, and then now do you have some sort of a contract with Walters?
I
right
do,
now?
got it right here. I made the down payment already.
Okay. So you're going to be applying for a permit if you haven't already?
I won't be, Kurt Mears will be applying for it, but
Right.
yes, yeah.
And is that going to happen now between now and the next meeting?
I don't know when Kurt's plans are. If that's part of the requirement, I can tell
All right,
Kurt that he
I'll-
needs to apply for a
I'll talk
permit.
to Kurt, yeah.
Okay,
I make a motion, we approve these. as
Second.
is. Second. You have anything in? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Gas tank levels?
Thank you.
1.6 and 1.0. And the price is $4.07.
They're all spoken for, but there's 3 or 4 lots that just were taken down.
Hard to say on that 1 meter whether
Probably
it's
won't build on, probably till
kind
spring.
of,
But they were
Yeah,
just
the
taken
7.
down.
yeah, the 1
One
0.
across the street from the one.
Oh, yeah, yeah. There's a 6-inch difference between the north tank and the
Another
south
one
tank,
down by
and
Mark German
I
and
believe
then
it's the
the
north
one
tank
around the
that's most
corner.
accurate. But I made a note to contact
Commercial lot, one of
Dave
the
to
commercial lots.
measure the tanks, if he hasn't already.
It's already, I mean, they're already spoken for, let's put it that way. I'm sorry.
What, something that we need to discuss?
No, my question was,
Oh, yeah.
I asked the question if with this approval, if all lots are now spoken for.
That was, yeah, and all the lots are spoken for.
Yes, that's correct.
They are all spoken for, and we've got in there, they've got leases on all of them. And right now, there's they're all under the 2-year building requirement right now.
So everybody technically now is in compliance.
Everybody's in compliance until the 2 years runs out,
That's right.
correct?
Perfect.
That's correct.
Any others from the floor? Jim?
What's the status of the Pappies?
Take them away.
On the west side, that'd be okay by me. I'm always afraid I'll hook one.
Right.
So what's the status?
A good question. I've not contacted SEH recently, meaning over the last few weeks, but I was advised early October that the FAA did perform their work, but they had asked MnDOT Aeronautics to put some blinders, I'm going to use a word, on them so that they, they have a better concentration for the pilots to see them. And I've not followed up to learn more about
If we're
that.
firing SEH, you might want to do that soon.
What's that?
If we're firing SEH, you might want to do that soon.
So Rick, they are working or they are not working?
I don't believe that they're on.
I don't-
I
I've
don't
not
think they
seen
can
them.
turn them on until they comply with the FAA's requirement.
And maybe they already do. Okay. Next question, how about a GPS approach? What's the status of that guy?
We at this point have not done anything with it. It's a dollars and cents thing.
Really? Okay.
That's,
It's about,
and there's been so many other things going on, we just haven't really gotten into it.
Okay. So maybe that's an item for the CIP.
And it is in the cost to do the survey is in the CIP.
Great.
and that cost was what, about $80,000 or something?
Somewhere around
Stupid
there.
thing.
May I be copied for that CIP? I'd like to see what your tentative starting point is. I'd be curious of that. And just one thing, I want to kudos to Sam. He called it a year ago. He said, once the runway is paved, all those lots will be taken within a year. And he nailed it. So anyway, good work, Sam. That's it.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Oh, wait, one individual yet would like to speak.
Just something to bring up too is, I was ridiculed by a few people by buying a low-wing plane. And I'm sensing, or I'm seeing that a little bit when, with all the construction around. Maybe just keep the word out too, that, I've had trouble getting in and around and, with everything, with everything down. So just as people build, just kind of keep that in mind too. And my plane is pretty wide and
I think it's pretty
I have
open
had a
now.
few issues getting through, so.
Snowbanks too. We got to make sure in the winter the snowbanks are
Yes.
shut down.
Had it blown off, yeah,
So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
yeah.
There was a motion, Dahlbeck-Husnick motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?